Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's event. My name is Neeraj Periwal. I work here at eFolder as a marketing coordinator, and I'll be your host for today's event. Welcome to our eFolder Partner Chat Series. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's presentation is called Breaking the Chain, Why One Partner Adopted a New BDR Solution. Today we're joined by Jon Shults, Director of Operations at nXio. Now let's first cover a few housekeeping items before I go into today's agenda. Today's session is being recorded. We're going to make a recorded version of the webinar available on our YouTube channel, and we are going to make available copies of the slides to everyone who registered for the event. So with over 50 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. If you can hear me, then hopefully you're dialed in or you're streaming this from your computer, and feel free to do whichever one you like more. So today's webinar, like any good webinar, follows a logical flow. After introducing our partner guests, we're going to take a look at 4 challenges that MSPs face when it comes to disaster recovery. After briefly introducing eFolder BDR for Replibit, I'm going to hand it over to Jon so we can hear all about why he decided to adopt eFolder BDR for Replibit and how he and his clients have benefited from this adoption. Now, just because we put everyone in listen-only mode doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. We encourage you to submit your questions through the chat log as we go throughout the webinar. We're going to try to address them as we go along, and of course, any remaining questions we'll try to tackle during the Q&A session at the end of today's discussion. So now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jon, our partner guest for today. Jon has been living in Kansas City his entire life and has worked in IT for 15 years. Jon's first technical job was phone support for H&R Block, where he worked alongside John Hardwick, who later founded nXio in 2004. In 2011, Jon was invited to join the team at nXio, which is currently transitioning from a traditional break-fix model to a more, mainstream managed services model. Jon attended the University of Central Missouri. Jon, thank you for joining us, and welcome today.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate being involved.
Yeah. So, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone about your company. I'll give you the stage and just tell everyone what makes nXio a really special MSP.
Sure. We've been in business about 11 and a half years. We've got a fairly small team, as you can see there. We've always kind of prided ourselves on being one of those service providers that could come into pretty much any situation and make something work. But as we've made this transition to the MSP model, we've really enjoyed not having to get quite as much duct tape involved as we've had to in the past. So it's been a nice transition for us, but it's also been a bit of a growing up process. And it's been fun to work with eFolder and to have some of these tools available to make this an easier process for us.
All right, great. So let's go ahead and get into the meat of the discussion today. So I'm going to start off by talking about 4 challenges that MSPs traditionally face when it comes to disaster recovery. So challenge number 1 is costly BDR hardware and software requirements. So a lot of BDR vendors out there have specific hardware appliances that are only really compatible with them, and they force you to buy your own hardware in order to use their entire BDR solution. So I'm not going to name any by name, but there are a few out there. And what happens is, the hardware appliances are often hard to upgrade or impossible to upgrade. So, when, let's say, you run out of space on a piece of hardware, on a BDR appliance, then you end up having to buy a new appliance entirely and redeploying it, which is not only costly, but can be quite a hassle. So that's one issue that people face. And also, because a lot of these BDR appliances run only on Windows, MSPs face the cost of not only buying the Windows OS, but also investing in antivirus and other software costs for these machines. And finally, these BDR vendors often force MSPs into long-term contracts, and these can range anywhere from 12 months to a few years. And hardware as a service is a business model that's seen kind of frequently in the BDR world, but we kind of feel that it's best to kind of let our partners not be in a long-term contract and do whatever they need to do to flourish. So the second challenge with a lot of BDR solutions is chain-based backups. So, when you have a single base image and a lot of chain dependency, meaning that your incremental backups made kind of got attached to that base image, you get a lot of risk because these incremental backups are obviously dependent on the incrementals that came before them and on the base image. And if anything, for whatever reason, corrupts, then you're kind of in a big panic. So, and then when you need to, for whatever reason, you want to restart the chain, you end up having to reseed the base image, and this is done in order to obviously reduce dependency on the chain, but it can be quite a hassle. It's very time-consuming, and even though it may not be technically difficult, it's something that most partners don't enjoy doing and would rather not have to do. The third challenge with traditional BDRs is ongoing labor and management. So, a lot of these BDR solutions don't have a data integrity check of the backups, meaning, you know that the chain is there, but you don't know if the data is actually good. And, obviously when you have chain dependency and you don't know if maybe a incremental image from 3 months ago was corrupt or not, then that can put you in a big conundrum if you're not sure about the integrity of that data. And a lot of these BDR services offer really feature-light management portals. Many of them don't have a single pane of glass to view the status of all deployed BDRs, and many of them don't provide remote management of BDR solutions. So, this is obviously a big issue because as an MSP with multiple BDR deployments, you're going to want to see all of them from one place and be able to manage them from that one location. And a lot of these BDR solutions don't allow you to do that. And the fourth challenge that I'm going to talk about is the fact that many of these BDR backups are unreliable. So, I mentioned again that sometimes the data within the backup chain is not verified. And also, a lot of these BDR services don't test the virtualization and recoverability capabilities. So when you really need them, if they don't actually come through, then you're stuck. And finally, the corruption of the operating system can render backups useless. If you don't know if the OS is good, then how do you know if you can boot? It's kind of a situation where it's like garbage in and garbage out, and you really want to avoid that kind of thing when it comes to something as important as BDR. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce one of our premier BDR solutions, which is eFolder BDR for Replibit. eFolder BDR for Replibit is an end-to-end backup and disaster recovery solution which bundles Replibit image-based backup software with the massive cloud storage and recovery capabilities of the eFolder cloud. So, they say a picture tells 1,000 words. Everybody loves pictures, so let's kind of look at a visual diagram of how BDR for Replibit works. So what happens is, with BDR for Replibit, you install the Replibit imaging software on the BDR appliance, which the server is backing up to, and the images the Replibit images of that BDR appliance get transmitted securely to the Replibit vault, which is located in the cloud, in the eFolder cloud in this case. And, all the time the MSP has the ability to look into the global management portal and get a bird's eye view of all of their BDR for Replibit deployment. Now, what happens if there's a site-wide disaster and you need to recover from the cloud? Well, fortunately, there's something called the eFolder Continuity Cloud, which allows an MSP partner to provision a node within that continuity cloud for on-demand recoverability and virtualization. So, let's say a flood takes down one of your client sites, what you can do, and, their BDR appliance goes down or isn't operable, you can provision a node within the cloud, our continuity cloud, and do that emergency in the cloud virtualization and recovery so that your client's data is instantly available, within a matter of minutes or hours, rather than having to deal with a disk shipment or, downloading a bunch of data, which could take days. So here are some key features of Replibit, which we think set it apart from every other BDR service out there. First is that it's change-free. So I mentioned earlier the problems with incremental backups. There could be issues with corrupt chains or corrupt images. You could have a lot of redundant data. Sometimes you just want to start over, but you don't want to go through the hassle of reseeding the data center. And, having a chain-free backup solution makes it so that you don't even have to worry about incrementals or corrupted incrementals. It just works as it should. The second key feature of Replibit is that it offers automated testing and screenshot verification. So every day you get an automated screenshot of the booted virtual machine or machines, and you have that logged within ConnectWise if you use ConnectWise through PSA, and it's done completely automatically. And this is really beneficial from a partner standpoint because obviously management is done in a very easy and seamless manner. The third feature of Replibit is that we offer really extensive data verification checks. So on every single backup, as it backs up the data, Replibit does about a half a dozen checks. They're listed there kind of at the bottom. And if enough of these checks fail, then Replibit will actually fail the backup, and it'll let you know, why it failed. For example, there are some data integrity errors with the backup. And then what that allows you to do as an MSP is say, okay, let me look into the issue and figure out what the issue is and hopefully fix it. So that way you don't end up with a massive chain of unreliable or corrupt backups that you later find out to be unworkable in 3 to 4 months or whatever that time period is. So it ends up saving a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and a lot of money. And finally, eFolder BDR for Replibit, like I mentioned before, offers really deep ConnectWise integration. So the appliance and vault can provide a full range of alerts that are pushed directly into ConnectWise. You get screenshot verification, again, of booted machines, and you get tickets that can be generated to the service board of your choice. So very kind of granular ConnectWise integration there. And of course, Replibit is hardware agnostic and OS independent. The Linux Ubuntu hardened kernel can run on pretty much any server hardware, which eliminates the requirement to have a Windows OS license, install antivirus, and other things that could cost a lot of money and kind of be a hassle to maintain and manage. And Linux is obviously open source, and that makes deployment really easy and really quick. And Again, the reboot after the agent installation is not required, and patching and updates happen automatically, which reduces the time for labor, configuration, and management. So now let's go ahead and I'm going to hand it over to Jon, and let's take a look at a few case studies that Jon has about how nXio has benefited from eFolder BDR for Replibit. So, Jon, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your first client here?
Sure. This first client is a manufacturing company. They have a BDR appliance that is actually an eFolder BDR appliance that we acquired when it was a StorageCraft solution. And then we retrofitted it to run Replibit because of a couple of issues that he ran into. He's the poster child of the chain issues that you were referencing earlier, that he would have issues with a large amount of data that changed accidentally. Like if he accidentally drug a folder into another one, that would count as 30 gigs of change that day. And then with the chain relationship on the backups makes that just about impossible to fix without having to go back and reseed and all that other stuff. He also had a very small upload. So when we would do the consolidations, in his case, we would do the monthly consolidations even, so that his cloud storage was as small as it could be, so that his bill was as small as it could be. That file that we had to upload at the end of the month was so large that it would knock his offsite backups out of whack for basically 2 weeks at a time. So every month he had 2 weeks of his offsite backups were no good. So that was really a big problem in his case. And on top of the fact that he had such a small upload, when it was doing that, his web experience was just terrible. So when Replibit became available, we went back and put Replibit on that appliance. And it really solved just about every single one of those issues. With Replibit taking the snap and then immediately sending it, it's a much more consistent experience for him because the snaps are so much smaller and they happen so much more quickly. And then since the consolidation happens, this gets consolidation is probably not the right word, but when the management of the snaps happens on both pieces or both ends, the local and the cloud, it significantly reduces the amount of data that's in transit. And keeps everything much more consistent and reliable for the customer. And in his case, the backup size is not changing that much either because the old stuff is falling off just as quickly as the new stuff that's coming on. And if there's one snap that's too big, it's not that big of a deal anymore. The other thing that this particular client really enjoyed is he's one of our more hands-on technical people. And we actually have him getting the email alerts that has the boot VM snapshot in it. And that just solidified with him that this was an awesome solution, that he could see every single day that his backups were good, the test VM booted properly, he's good to go, nothing terrible can happen to him.
Right. So that's really interesting. So it kind of gives him the reassurance that the solution that you're deploying to him is actually working like it should. So how do you, just for my knowledge and out of the curiosity of the audience, how do you have him getting the email notifications about the backup?
It is on the appliance itself. You can configure both the ConnectWise integration and the email alerting at the same time. So in his case, we have the ConnectWise stuff, of course, reporting to our ConnectWise, and then the emails are going to him. And then he does get, as a result of that, he does get the alerts when there's a missed backup and all that other stuff. But then he also gets the alerts saying, the backup's good, it's resolved itself, everything's happy again. So for the most part, he doesn't get a whole lot of traffic, but he does get everything.
Okay, cool. And how much data is this client backing up?
Under StorageCraft, his backups were regularly around 300 gigs. With Replibit, they're a little closer to 250. And he's running a traditional small business standard server, that's still running Exchange and all that. So he's one of our smaller from a data size customers. But sure. We did see a nice little change in that storage amount as well.
Right. And that's probably, not only saving him money, but saving you a little bit of money as well, without having to back up all that, like as much data to the cloud as you were before.
Right.
Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and, I guess, move on to the second client here. So why don't you tell us more about this architecture firm?
This is an architecture firm that has about 55 users. They also are a small business 2011 standard client. They don't have Replibit yet, but we're about to do a server migration for them, and it's going to be one of my most exciting Replibit deployments, I think, because this particular customer, the way they're backing their data up now is just a disaster. They have one of the partners of the firm, which is probably one of the most expensive people to be doing the job. He's actually rotating external hard drives, and he's doing it about every 2 days because they have such a tremendous amount of data. I think last I looked, they have about 8 terabytes of data that the backups take 2 full days to complete. So he has to go rotate the drives, and of course he's busy, so he doesn't always get to it, so there's holes there. The backup drives only go off-site whenever he remembers to take them off-site, so there's significant holes there as well, and he's just got better things to be doing with his time. So we're going to move them to a fully redundant virtualized environment, and then we're going to have Replibit backing up the VMs in that regard. So we get to take that off of his plate at the same time as giving them much, much better backup solution.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that backup solution pretty much sounds like a backup solution I use at home.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, at least they have backups, but there's been times where we've needed them and they weren't good.
Wow. So when it comes to, in terms of, why did this client, do you feel, will benefit most from Replibit and not from, say, another BDR solution?
The Replibit thing that we're most excited about is that that it doesn't keep the redundant, that does the deduplication on the data. Because being an architecture firm, they have all kinds of drawings and documents, and their logo is on everything. So it's like something as simple as not being able to hold 500 different copies of their logo across stuff is really going to make a big impact on how much their backup size really is.
Right.
So that's going to save them a little bit of money, and of course, as we've talked about before, a lot of their heartache and concerns that keep them up at night are going to go away as well.
Cool. So how did you become aware of the backup kind of strategy this firm was using? Did you go to them? Did they come to you? How did that conversation happen? And then how did you introduce eFolder BDR for Replibit to them? How are you doing?
We've been working with them for a long time, and they started doing this backup method just because at the time they were really cost sensitive, and they wanted a very cost-effective solution. So that's how we got them set up on that hard drive backup, and we gave them full disclosure, this is not ideal, but it's the best we've got to work with. But then as they've grown and gotten larger, so has their budget for better solutions. And as a result, as part of the server migration, one of the things they even asked us for was, okay, now it's time to fix our backups. Let's do something better.
Okay. So it was kind of, they knew that what they were doing wasn't really a long-term solution, and then you kind of came to a mutual understanding, like, okay, Replibit would probably be the best thing for you, and so we're going to go ahead and do that deployment.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'm actually looking at question logs here, and there are a few questions from Doug that, maybe we should address.
Sure.
So one of the questions is, in regards to backing up VMs, what kind of VMs can be backed up by Replibit?
The VMs that we did work with eFolder on this one to make sure that we were planning this right, because the VM gets backed up as if it's just a physical machine, essentially. It's not cluster aware or anything like that. So like if you had a significant virtual environment and you wanted everything backed up at the VM level, Replibit may not be the solution for you. But if you're just, and in this case, they've got a handful of VMs, and we're going to treat them as if they're physicals from a backup standpoint. They're going to have the Replibit agent running on them, and they're going to get snapped. And even in our test environment, that's working great. So if it was a significantly large infrastructure, I might be a little nervous about that. But in our case, it should be exactly what we need.
Right. And, when we think about most of our MSP partners, I mean, most of them have these relatively small clients, they don't have like 50 terabytes of data or whatever to back up. So it seems like if they have mostly a straightforward backup plan, then Replibit would probably work well for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at my log here. Another question from Doug is, can the virtualized image be moved from the BDR and run from a more powerful device? Is this something that you've ever needed to do?
No, we haven't. We built the BDRs when we got them from eFolder. We built them to be about as powerful as the PCs they were backing up.
Okay.
I know from our testing, we're backing up a server that's got 32 gigs of RAM and the BDR's got 16. It's like you're going to have some experience differences there, but for the most part, it hasn't really been an issue for us. And I don't know about actually moving the images. I know all the virtualization stuff is built within or baked into the Replibit appliance. So I'd probably defer to your support on that one, but we've never had to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to some more questions from you. So, what have been the biggest Replibit or benefit of deploying eFolder BDR for Replibit for you?
Well, we've seen the ConnectWise integration is very much appreciated. That has really streamlined a lot of our backup issues. Really, when we get those daily snapshots of the VMs, we actually have our office manager as the person who works those tickets. And literally all she does is open it up, look at the screenshot, hey, that's a login screen, we're good. Or, hey, that's not a login screen, someone needs to look at this. And so that's just reduced time that my techs have to do things, but I can have someone who's not technical take that role. And it has really it's freed up their time, it's freed up our expense. One of the other big benefits we've had is that the billing for customers has gotten a lot more consistent. I have a third client that is a law office of about 8 users that before we moved to Replibit, their backup cost was just up and down and all over the place. I mean, at its lowest was our minimum cost at the time of $40, and then 6 months later, it was $226 just because of the amount of data that they had stored off-site. So with Replibit and the way that eFolder packages the data with it, we're able to get them on a very consistent bill that they can actually build some genuine budgets around and not this dart throwing that basically, we have a very good relationship with them, but when your backup costs are changing that much over that time period, it just kind of invites skepticism. So it's like, we have a better relationship now because everything seems to work better, a lot more consistent, a lot more predictable, and my guys' times are freed up.
Okay. And with regard to this law office, would you say that the main motivation for deploying Replibit to them was the reduced cost of backing up data?
In their case, it was kind of a combination of they were our last customer to move to Replibit, so it was a combination of we need to get standardized, so they're just going to get it. And then at the same time, it was a clear case of their data usage is all over the place, and thus their bills are too, so we can fix that problem at the same time.
Right. Okay. So standardize on a solution that would meet their needs, but then also, would make your life easier because you're deploying it to everyone else.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, have you encountered any kind of pushback or any resistance from clients who are like, I don't really know why I need a BDR solution? I mean, what do you say to those kind of clients?
Well, we do run into those clients. Those are usually our smaller traditional break-fix clients. And what we've kind of learned as part of our growing up in this MSP transition is that some people just don't understand the value of it. And there's not really anything I can do short of, pointing out a disaster that happened to them and saying that wouldn't have happened to really get them to understand the value of it. And so going forward, as we're working with MSP people, they just get it as part of the MSP agreement. It's not really a point of conversation. It's more of this is something we're doing to protect your business, and it needs to be there, and it's included in what you're already paying. Don't worry about it. But to get someone who doesn't already see the value in IT to understand why the BDR is important is pretty difficult to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a technical solution, but yeah, I mean, you basically answered my third question here, which is that you're just going to make BDR for Replibit kind of a standard part of your managed services pricing or package. So that way, every client is protected, which benefits you and obviously gives them peace of mind.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, we need a consistent experience to make efficient use of my techs, and Replibit's just been the best solution that we've run across for this kind of thing. I mean, we were doing the StorageCraft BDRs before. We looked at a couple of other solutions out there, and it's like there's really no reason for us to not have Replibit at a customer that we are investing in as well. We're just asking for trouble to not have that there. So that's why we kind of take the conversation out completely and just say, this is what it is, we're just going to leave it in the corner and feed and water it as needed.
Yeah. Okay, great. And yeah, I can imagine with only 3 techs on staff, all of your time is probably really valuable. So you want to make it as easy for you and your clients as you can. So great. Let's go ahead and so it looks like you have a pretty great profit margin, gross profit margin on Replibit. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your pricing and packaging strategy here?
Well, with our MSP packaging, we bill the customer based on number of users that are covered, number of endpoints, and number of sites. And then the site fee is kind of we adjust that as needed. But everybody who has that site fee, it's structured that we're making profit by putting a BDR there, by being able to put a BDR there as well. So that pricing, it's kind of hard for me to go into the details of where that number comes from, but that's where that's how we operate, that's how we enumerate those MSP users. The break fix customers that have the BDR still, those we just bill those flat out. We're doing 150 for the unit and the eFolder protection, and then we're rolling in 500 gigs of storage for that. Whereas I know eFolder's giving us 2 terabytes before they bill us, but what we've run into is most people actually aren't using more than 500 gigs, but it gives us lots of protection for those big users when they do show up.
Yeah, and I mean, just to make a little plug for eFolder, I mean, we pull that storage at the partner level. So when we give Jon or any of our other partners 2 terabytes of storage per protected server, they can say, oh, this client only needs 500 gigs, but this client, maybe they have a lot of data, they need 3 terabytes. So we're going to take away from the first client in order to benefit the second.
Right, and that architecture client, they've got 8 terabytes of data sitting on their server. We're going to break them out into 3 different virtual servers. So they are going to have 6 terabytes of bundled data added to our existing pool. So in their case, we've just told them they're going to get unlimited backups, and they have a different price for that. But because it's such a big number, it's a scary thing to even put a price tag on. So for us to be able to say, it doesn't matter how much that you're using, it's included, is kind of a big deal for us.
Right. Yeah, at some point, for those kind of clients, storage doesn't, you don't really want to make storage a part of the conversation. You just want to give them peace of mind, like everything you've got, we're going to be backing up off-site, and we're going to be allowing you to recover it if necessary. So. Yeah,
because what we run into, especially in this customer, they've got so much data they try to archive stuff. So then they have like an archive external hard drive that's floating around the office that's not getting backed up at all because they're doing it to save money. Whereas when we can turn around and just say, just put it all on the server, let's back it all up, it doesn't matter, they have a better experience with that as well.
Right. Okay. Hey, I got one question here from Rusty that I think you might be able to lend a little bit of insight into. So he asked, how do you spend some BDR bots? Because we use a simple NAS with storage. It looks like he meant to say shadow test. So how do you handle that, the pricing of the actual BDR appliance?
The break fix clients purchased the device outright. So that was just a cost that we just kind of passed on to them. They literally own that hardware. The managed services customers, we buy it and then provide it, and we just structure the agreement as such that we're protected as far as recouping the cost of the hardware and all that stuff. That it can sit there for 3 years and we're not still paying for that hardware for 3 years. That's
Right.
kind of how we do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And have you, given that Replibit can run on any hardware that meets the minimum requirements, have you taken advantage of that by like recommissioning old BDR appliances for Replibit?
Yeah, that's actually all of the BDRs that we have out there are originally eFolder StorageCraft BDRs that were running Windows and are now running, the Ubuntu-based solution. That architecture client, we're taking their old server and just stuffing it full of hard drives, and that's going to be their Replibit box.
Okay, great. And that probably saves you a lot of money, right? Like, and a lot of hassle because you don't have to source a new appliance.
Yeah, it was just another concerning conversation that we didn't have to have, because we don't have to find this hardware solution. It's already there. We're just going to augment it a little bit and repurpose it.
Right. Yeah, we've heard from you and a lot of our other partners that the more frictionless they can make, like a migration from no BDR to BDR, or from one BDR service to another BDR service, like the more seamless that is, the more the customer is likely to be okay with it. So, or to even, want it. So, I think that's one of the reasons why we do that kind of hardware agnostic model with Replibit. Not only because we can, but because we find that partners and clients really benefit from it. So let's go ahead here and move. So, we already kind of talked about this, but we found that on average, eFolder per server class storage utilization is about a quarter terabyte. But regardless of that fact, we don't even want to make storage a part of, we don't even want to make an issue. So that's why we bundle in 2 terabytes per protected server of cloud storage. So, with Replibit, you really don't even have to think about how much data you're backing up, or, what hardware you're using, or any of that. Simply an affordable solution that you can give out to your clients and provide them with a really robust end-to-end business continuity solution. So kind of going into the pricing here, because everybody loves to think about, talk about pricing. So, the most you're going to pay per server for eFolder BDR for Replibit is $65 per server. And that's if you have 3 to 9 servers. And from there, it goes down quite dramatically. So, from 10 to 49, you've got only 55 per server, and then 50 up, it's $50 a server, 100 and up, it's 45 per server, and if you're backing up more than 250 servers, we can probably give you an even better deal. So we encourage you to give us a call and try to figure out what we can do for you. And like Jon was mentioning, the service really comes bundled with all of this stuff. Not only the actual cloud storage, but the backup agent software, the appliance software. You've got that one pane of glass with the global management portal, and all of that storage. So you don't even have to think about that. It doesn't have to be a part of the conversation. So, so now let's kind of look at the questions here. We've got a question from Peter, which is which cloud storage vendors are allowed. So, I guess we're kind of biased here, but Replibit works really great with the eFolder cloud. We provide an end-to-end backup solution and disaster recovery solution. We provide really low wholesale pricing, and we let our partners kind of go out there, buy from us, and then let them price it however they like, because we encourage our partners to generate really high, recurring revenue on a monthly basis. Because we know that if our partners aren't making money, then you're not going to want to give us money. So, we want to make it as good of an experience as we can. Let's see,
if I could add on to that just for a second, I will say our experience with Replibit has not been 100% perfect, but one of the things that's really made it good is that since we're working with eFolder, eFolder is big enough to go beat up on Replibit and get some answers for some stuff that that we needed. We weren't really getting what we expected, and eFolder was able to go be our big brother and go knock it out of them for us. So that really, really helped. I know a lot of our partners wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Another question we've got here from Hank is, can Replibit back up data on NAS devices? The answer is yes. Pretty much any hardware that meets the minimum standards for Replibit, being able to handle that, the image-based software, Replibit can back it up and send it off to our cloud. Let's see if we have any more here. Another question from Doug is, what type of image is the VM stored as? VMware, Oracle VirtualBox, etc. John, do you want to answer this?
I actually don't know, because we don't. Our experience with those appliances is the only thing we really need to ever interact with is the web interface. We never see the raw file structure. I couldn't tell you exactly what's running it. I would assume VirtualBox, but I'm guessing. But it's like we've never had to get that deep into the appliance to know that answer. Right.
No, that's a really good question for our support team. We have a really great support team, and I'll make sure to reach out to you personally and get you an answer for that, because I know that's a thing that you have on your mind. Let's see if we have anything more. I think we're all covered on the questions here. But if I could just, make a little plug for one thing that we'd like to provide all our partners, it's something that we call the eFolder Business Continuity Playbook. And it's really like one PDF document that has a whole host of educational and brandable marketing and selling tools that you can use to introduce the concept of BDR and business continuity to your clients, and help them understand why do they need offsite backup and disaster recovery for their data. What are the costs of downtime that they could incur if something like a fire or flood or power outage knocked out their business for 1, 2, 3 days a week. So it's something to really get the conversation going and to educate them on why they should turn to you to offer or to adopt a BDR solution. So, the playbook is full of white papers, blogs. These are all pre-written things. We've already done all the work from you. You literally just have to take a Word doc or a PowerPoint, put your own logo on it, save it as a PDF, and send it off to your client. We've got a generic video where we don't mention eFolder by name, so you're free to kind of tack on your own name there if you want and talk about the benefits of BDR to your clients, a brochure, a client pitch deck, and a lot more. So, for partners like John, where they're really satisfied or they're really upbeat about Replibit, but there's a client that for whatever reason needs that extra nudge or needs to understand why they need BDR in the first place. The Business Continuity Playbook, we think, is a really great asset. And so for everyone who attended today's session, kind of like a little thank you gift, we're going to give all of you a download of the playbook. And we encourage you to download it, look through it, see what assets you find helpful, and then send them off to your clients to educate them about business continuity and how it can benefit them. Another small plug I'm going to make is for our next webinar. Myself and my colleague Carmen Yu are going to be talking about 5 cool features of Anchor's mobile app. Anchor, for those of you who don't know, is our file sync and sharing solution built from the ground up for MSPs to deploy to their clients as a secure and HIPAA compliant and really robust file sync and share solution. And, during this webinar, we're going to be really talking about how your clients can be using the mobile app to the fullest advantage. And that's going to be taking place next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. You should be, if you're on our email list, you should be receiving an email promo, I think, tomorrow. So feel free to sign up for that and join in on that. Let's take a final look at the Q&A log. Peter here has one question, and we'll go ahead and try to answer it before we sign off here. Does the reseller need to be experienced with Linux, or is the install a turnkey install? John, do you have any insight into this?
Yeah, it's fairly turnkey. I mean, you download an ISO, you burn it, and then it boots up and basically installs itself. The few times that we've had to do some significant upgrades, we've had Homer in eFolder support work with us we're basically just his hands. And so we go out there and put the media in, and then he remotes in and takes care of it from there. So we're primarily a Windows shop. I can kind of do some Linux stuff, but we don't have to deal with that at all. I mean, it's really just a hardware appliance with a web interface, just like a router or something like that. And then
right.
Anytime the heavy lifting is required, eFolder's done it for us. So
yeah, we try to make sure that you don't need a PhD in computer science just to deploy BDR to your clients. Well, great. I think that really covers the topic we have at hand today. But I wanted to first off, thank you so much, John, for taking the time to come on and talk to our audience. I think the information that you provided is really valuable and was really helpful. And just seriously, thank you so much for all your help today.
Sure, it was fun to be a part of it, actually.
Yeah, and thank you obviously to everyone who joined us for this hour-long webinar. We know your time is valuable, so we appreciate you taking the time to watch it. My name is Neeraj Periwal again. I'm a marketing coordinator here at eFolder. My email is there in case you have any questions and would like to follow up with me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But thank you again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. So thank you, everybody. Have a great Thursday and have a great rest of your week and enjoy your weekend.